International Affairs Analyst Dr. Bola Adediran joins me on the news from London to discuss this. Good to have you join us, Dr. Adediran.
Thank you very much.
It will seem as if President Biden isn't satisfied with the WHO report on this, and that he has now joined the growing number of people who are skeptical about the natural emergence theory of the coronavirus.
Is that a leak has come out from the intelligence community about the possibility that the virus, the origins of the virus is quite different from what we have been made to believe over the last 24 months. The report said that apparently sometime in November 2019, there were three workers of the Wuhan laboratory who got sick about the same time, who took seriously ill, and they went to the hospital. And this was about a month or 2 months before the world knew about coronavirus. Now, what has happened is that it has increased scrutiny of the version of events that the WHO put out and the rest of the scientific community believed at the beginning of this virus, and what the Chinese government has said and insisted over time. And I think that what Biden is trying to do here is to put all doubts all doubts to rest, because I think it is very important for the rest of the world to be very clear about what exactly transpired in November 2019. Now, it is very important to also mention that at the moment, this is not a slam dunk. Some people are still insisting that the theory is the assumption that it was developed in a laboratory, and that jumped on humans and infected humans, that theory is still unsupported by the evidence. So I think that these are early days, but hopefully the intelligence report will give us clearer understanding of what exactly transpired in November 2019.
When you look at the WHO report, which is over 300 pages, it did say that the likelihood that this emerged from a lab, in quotes, is extremely unlikely. Why is this so controversial?
Well, I think that we have to be very clear about something, which is that the Wuhan laboratory has been involved in researching coronaviruses and trying to understand them better. In fact, the United States government has funded the Wuhan laboratory. In fact, Dr. Fauci said that earlier, a couple of weeks ago, that because of the importance of coronaviruses and the knowledge that the next pandemic could be from coronaviruses, many governments, including the United States government, have been putting funds into researching that. So on one hand, there is a plausibility of some sort to think that this could have been an accident that occurred at the lab. But at the same time, scientists have also looked at the genome of the virus and determined, based on the information that they had at that time, that it's unlikely that it could have been as a result of a leak from the laboratory. The other thing I want to mention is that there are two parts of this theory. One is that it was a biological weapon sort of developed by the Chinese that got out of security and infected human beings. The other part of it is obviously the accidental infection. The first one is widely discredited. There is no assumption, there is no credible evidence that shows that this was indeed a biological weapon orchestrated by the Chinese people. But the other version seems slightly possible, even though the evidence bears differently. The widely accepted idea is that this virus actually made contact, jumped from bats in the wet market of the Wuhan province and infected human beings. And until the report comes out with clarity on this, I think the rest of the world will have to hold their breath regarding what exactly is the origin of the coronavirus.
But we haven't seen the rest of the world really speaking much about this, except for countries like the US, Australia, and just a couple of countries. But when you also look at China's posturing during the first investigation by WHO, what is the likelihood that China is going to cooperate and that we might find something to hold on to anytime soon?
I think it's unfortunate that China has been very secretive and has refused access, comprehensive access to international scientists and WHO's scientists. There was this back and forth at the beginning of the coronavirus, and there are people around the world who believe that China has not been absolutely forthright on the evidence that they have regarding coronavirus. For instance, China, we don't still know what the exact data about China deaths and infection rates really are. So China has been very, very careful, has been careful in terms of providing all the information that the rest of the world needs. Now, the truth is that China needs this as much as possible. It needs to be open and to provide evidence, because there are countries and states around the world who still think that there are a lot of things that China is hiding. So it would be in China's interest to be absolutely open about this. But having said that, we also still have to understand and put this within the broader context of geopolitics between the US and China. Any attempt to embarrass China internationally would be to the interest of the US. And we have to keep that in mind. And that played a key part in how Donald Trump tried to also design and discuss the coronavirus. He was calling it the Chinese flu. He was calling it all sorts of things, sort of to try and deflect attention to China and to ratchet up the rhetoric against China, which is part of
Dr. Adediran, I don't want to lose these points you're making, because it's very interesting that you mentioned this. A lot of people think that this is an opportunity for the U.S. to position itself against China on the global stage. But here is a statement from China on this, and it says the politicization of tracing the origins of coronavirus would seriously hamper international cooperation on the pandemic. China says, look, if you make this about politics, we are not going to cooperate, and you need China to cooperate. What can be done to ensure that China does work with the team of investigators that would be set up maybe by the US or WHO?
Yes, and this is exactly what I was saying, that China has to be open, but at the same time, just putting out statements saying that the politicization of this discussion and the pandemic and the response to the pandemic is not good. Yes, we know that, but at the same time, you have to give us the necessary information and open up the Wuhan province to international scientists so that they can determine what exactly occurred. And until China does that, questions will continue to be brought up. So it's in China's interest, on one hand, to open up itself to international scrutiny, but at the same time, as I was mentioning, we also have to keep in mind how all of this plays for China. China has to, at the end of this pandemic, maybe in 2022, it has to do more in terms of trying to reassert itself internationally. It was trying to do that with its with the aid that it was sending to African countries. It was in part realization that it is responsible for this pandemic and how it has affected the rest of the world, and that's why it was sending COVID vaccines and equipment to African countries, trying to get ahead of the game by engaging in some form of diplomacy. But that is not going to be enough. Post the pandemic, when all issues have been cleared, there are still going to be scrutiny and discussions about China's role, the cover-up, and the lack of openness in the way that it handled the coronavirus pandemic. So at the end of the day, China needs this in terms of its international standing, in terms of its international reputation, and the only thing that could help it is to be a bit more forthright and a bit more open about exactly what has transpired.
And we hope we can see that from China. I mean, it's a long. It's a big thing to ask from China to be transparent in terms of how it has handled this coronavirus, and we'll see how that plays out. International Affairs Analyst Dr. Bola Adediran, always great to have you talk to us.
Thank you very much.